technique of removing excess salts from seawater is crucial in making it safe and usable. Saudi Arabia is the world's largest producer of desalinated water.
Saudi Arabia is one of the most fascinating countries with a rich natural tapestry of desert landscapes, with over 95% of its landmass being either a desert or semi-desert. The nation is one of the largest countries in the world without a permanent river. Thus, coupled with its harsh climates and little rainfall, has made it inhospitable for humans and plants. However, recently the desert has been making astonishing transformations in both individual sectors and all-around development. The once seemingly barren land has successfully been revolutionized with only little help from notable figure Elon Musk. But the question remains, how did they achieve this impossible feat? And what secrets behind Saudi Arabia's desert are responsible for this transformation? This video will reveal the secret behind Saudi Arabia's rise to prominence and its groundbreaking plans to grow even bigger. With a landmass of over 2.18 square kilometers, Saudi Arabia occupies over 80% of the Arabian Peninsula. This large geographical expanse comes with extensive boundaries that touch Jordan and Iraq to the north, Kuwait to the northeast, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates to the east, Oman to the southeast, and Yemen to the south. The Red Sea borders the western side, while the Arabian Gulf defines the northeastern boundary. But this vastness isn't just about size, it's also about diversity. Saudi Arabia's landscape is a design of contrasting extremes, consisting of the scorching deserts of the Rub al-Khali, or the empty quarter, to the cool, tall peaks of the Hijaz Mountains. The Rub al-Khali, or empty quarter, stands as one of the largest continuous sand deserts globally, covering almost all the southern part of the country. The Hijaz Mountains, on the other hand, lie along the western edge, endowed with lush valleys, cascading waterfalls, and ancient villages that contrast deeply to the arid deserts. These wonders of nature have contributed significantly to Saudi Arabia's poor climate, which has proved daunting and dire over the years. Since the nation is largely dominated by deserts like the Rub al-Khali, climate and landscape from a challenging problem due to its aridity. The vast sea of dunes coupled with the meager and irregular rainfall has made the Saudis quite inhospitable. Yearly rainfall can average as low as 100 millimeters in many areas and even lower. This in turn has caused the country to face a scarcity of water resources. They depend largely on the primary water supply from the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf, which are very high in salinity. This has made Saudi Arabia home to extreme temperatures. During the summer, daytime temperatures can exceed as high as 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and nighttime temperatures can drop significantly. To worsen matters, there is a noticeable lack of cloud cover in the country, also contributing to the rapid heat dispersion and intensity of the daily temperature. Because of all these factors, Saudi Arabia intensified its commitment to addressing the challenges posed by its climate and landscape through various initiatives. Investments in technology for desalination plants, water recycling, and sustainable agricultural practices are parts of the nation's efforts to adapt to and mitigate the impacts of its harsh environment. But what has perplexed experts even more is how recently the desert has turned into fertile farmland suitable for large-scale agriculture. This unexpected phenomenon challenges the historical perception of Saudi Arabia as a dry landscape. And the origin of this change is not far-fetched. It all began with the discovery of substantial oil reserves in 1934, leading to the country owning around 17% of the world's recognized petroleum reserves. The discovery of these substantial oil reserves ushered Saudi Arabia into an era of complete transformation. It reflected not only in the nation's economy and society, but also altered its desert landscape's very fabric. This tremendous shift can be seen in the most revolutionized sector, which is agriculture. Normally, given the country's arid nature and sweltering heat, it's not a suitable land for agriculture to thrive, even domestically. For context, as recently as 1976, the nation was only estimated to contain about 400,000 square kilometers of arable land, representing only 0.5% of the country's total population. However, these statistics changed greatly after the country's breakthrough discovery of oil. The availability of this oil revenue meant that Saudi government had enough funding to invest in ambitious agricultural projects. So they did, and the end has left the world in awe. Through their investments, most desert areas have been converted into agricultural lands. This was a direct result of the Saudi government leveraging technology to support and promote agriculture in its deserts. They invested significantly in agricultural technology, which included adopting precision agriculture techniques. efficient irrigation systems, and using advanced machinery and equipment. The goal was to enhance productivity and sustainability, and by the 1970s, the goal was realized. The technological advancements put in place by the government optimized their resource utilization in the arid desert environment. Only a few years later, the country transitioned from a wheat importer to an exporter and achieved self-sufficiency in various commodities. But their efforts weren't limited to only technology. The government also invested in research and development. Investing in agricultural research and development adapted their farming practices to desert conditions. That led to a substantial increase in the agricultural productivity of the nation. This huge success led the government to support research institutions and collaborate with international partners to develop more drought-resistant crops tailored to the desert climate. For the problem of domestic farming, the government extended its support to farmers by providing interest-free loans, subsidies, and incentives for them. The provision of these interest-free loans has now become a crucial aspect of supporting domestic agriculture. These loans enable farmers to invest in technology, purchase high-quality seeds, and implement sustainable farming practices without the burden of interest payments. This financial support has helped mitigate the risks associated with agricultural ventures in the region. But given the water scarcity in desert regions, the government focused on water conservation and management strategies the most. They addressed the water scarcity issue by tapping into aquifers and improving their efforts to desalinate seawater from the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf. Recycling facilities were established to manage domestic water waste, which also contributed to the irrigation of agricultural fields. Also, they set up initiatives like implementing drip irrigation systems, rainwater harvesting, and the promotion of water-efficient farming practices to maximize the use of available water resources for agriculture. Due to these initiatives, millions of acres of desert have been converted into productive agriculture. From less than 400,000 acres of arable land in 1976 to being the major exporter of wheat, dates, dairy products, fish, poultry, fruits, vegetables, and flowers. Saudi Arabia has truly witnessed a remarkable transformation, demonstrating its significant achievements in the agricultural sector. But its achievements were not only limited to the agricultural sector. With the oil boom came enough revenue to renovate their sectors as well, like infrastructure development. The oil boom led to the development of previously untouched desert regions. Several cities emerged as hubs of the flourishing oil industry. Infrastructure construction like roads, pipelines, and refineries led to significant alterations in land use. Vast stretches of desert have been transformed into industrial zones, residential areas, and transportation networks. This transformation has extended to even the coastal regions, where ports and terminals have been developed along the Red Sea and Arabian Gulf for oil exports and economic activities, including trading and fishing. As a result, the country's economy naturally diversified from oil, which has been a much recognized need for the longest time. Today, they are one of the largest exporters of shrimp, specifically the black tiger shrimp, which is a rare breed. This shift in focus has also led to investments in other industries such as petrochemicals, tourism, and renewable energy, thus influencing a more diversified revenue. The revenue generated from these industries has been heavily invested in the nation's technological advancement, especially in the oil industry. Activities like drilling, extraction, and refining processes have required an upgrade in the country's technological development. This progress facilitated efficient oil production and improved resource utilization and population growth. The increased economic opportunities generated by the oil industry attracted a surge in population. People from various parts of Saudi Arabia and beyond flocked to the oil-rich areas, contributing to the demographic shift from nomadic or rural lifestyles to settled urban living. This influx of people led to the establishment of new communities and the expansion of the existing ones. However, the downside to this great development is not far-fetched. Although the oil wealth has brought prosperity to the nation, it has also posed environmental challenges. Oil extraction and processing has had ecological impacts, and the increased human activity in the once wholesome desert environment has raised concerns about habitat disruption and biodiversity loss. A mind-blowing statistic is that since the discovery of oil, Saudi Arabia has produced more than 4% of the global greenhouse gases since 1965, and this is the top contributor to these scorching summer temperatures that regularly surpass 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's so bad that a significant portion of the population, particularly the two-thirds under the age of 35, have been facing serious impacts of climate change. Scientists have also warned that this could turn into life-threatening conditions in the foreseeable future. So, Saudi Arabia must navigate a delicate balance between maintaining its position as an oil superpower and actively engaging in the global fight against climate change. The world is transforming from fossil fuels to renewable and clean energy to save the climate. And though Saudi Arabia's undeniable dominance in the global oil market has proven reserves of approximately 267 billion barrels, the nation finds itself at a crossroads. Whether or not they could successfully diversify their economy and reduce their overwhelming dependence on oil or risk economic repercussions has always been a weak spot for the nation. Nevertheless, considerable efforts have been made. The Saudi government set forth an ambitious plan to transition to cleaner energy sources, with initiatives ranging from establishing electric vehicle or EV charging stations to retrofitting homes and offices with low-energy electricity systems. They are investing in approximately 33 different solar and wind projects as a commitment to the renewable energy movement. To help with this feat, the Saudi government enlisted the help of Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, according to a Wall Street Journal report. The report stated that there were allegedly early-stage talks between Tesla and Saudi Arabia regarding critical metal supplies. The journal suggested that Saudi Arabia aimed to secure metal supplies, including cobalt from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which are crucial for Tesla's batteries. However, the initial plan was blindsided as serious complications arose in their ownership of Lucid, which is a Tesla competitor, and the past tensions between Musk and Saudi rulers. The whole saga began in 2017 when Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund expressed interest in taking Tesla private. Musk then revealed several meetings with the fund, and in August 2018, he tweeted about considering taking Tesla private at $420 with, quote, funding secured. This triggered a huge controversy and subsequent blog posts explaining discussions with the sovereign wealth fund. However, the Saudis weren't committed to securing the funding for Tesla like they initially said, which led to tensions between the two. Then in 2019, the Saudi wealth fund enlisted JP Morgan Chase to hedge its nearly 5% stake in Tesla, protecting itself from price fluctuations. Simultaneously, they invested $1 billion in Lucid Motors, Tesla's rival, ultimately gaining majority ownership in 2020. This move was part of a broader strategy, aligning with Saudi Arabia's commitment to diversify its investments beyond Tesla, which they had initially discussed solely investing in. The controversy extended to Twitter, where Saudi Prince Al-Alawid bin Talal objected to Musk's proposed buyout at $54.20 per share, considering it undervaluing Twitter. This opposition highlighted broader tensions and differences in valuation perspectives. By January, Musk faced trial accusations about his funding secure tweet in 2018. Despite expectations that Yasir al-Ramayan, the governor of Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, would support Musk's case, he decided he had no legal obligations to Musk, thus leaving him to defend himself in the trial. This highlighted the complexity of the relationship between Musk and Saudi Arabia, marked by disagreements over valuations and business dealings. Musk later denied the claims made by the journal and his tweet. As Musk is regarded a figure in the Western Front, his tension with Saudi Arabia caused foreign investors to be deterred from making any investments in the nation. Other concerns raised were their human rights issues, which are generally returning to Saudi Arabia. It's also caused skepticism about Saudi Arabia's genuine commitment to environmental stewardship on a global front. Critics argue that the nation's efforts to reduce carbon emissions might be insufficient, accusing it of greenwashing, making symbolic gestures without substantive changes. This skepticism is fueled by the simultaneous pursuit of plans to increase oil production to 13 million barrels daily. However, Saudi Arabia's unique advantage is that it doesn't rely heavily on investors. It has centralized control of its oil sector through the state-owned Saudi Aramco, with the valuation of Saudi Aramco reaching over $2.3 trillion. It is second most valuable company globally. This has enabled the country to allocate substantial funds to research and development, unlike private oil companies focused on immediate returns. Also, the government's willingness to invest in innovative projects, such as capturing and reusing carbon emissions from oil fields, reflects a strategic approach to addressing environmental challenges. One of the pioneering experiments is Neom, a futuristic $500 billion city northwest of Saudi Arabia. Neom serves as a testing ground for innovative concepts such as air taxis and green initiatives, creating a sustainable and eco-friendly environment. The city's commitment to generating most of its electricity from green hydrogen reflects Saudi Arabia's aspirations to be fossil fuel powered and present itself as a clean energy leader. It was launched in 2016 as Saudi Arabia's most ambitious plan, Vision 2030, which is a cornerstone in the nation's strategic pursuit of economic diversification and long-term sustainability. This vision initiative aims to shift the economic landscape by reducing reliance on oil-related revenues and increasing the non-oil GDP share from 16% to an ambitious 50% by 2030, according to insights from King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center. At the heart of this transformation lies a concentrated effort to diversify non-oil exports. A key component of this economic metamorphosis is the exploration of hydrogen production to diminish dependence on domestic oil revenue. This not only aligns with the objectives of Vision 2030, but also leverages existing oil and gas infrastructure and supply chain networks. Saudi Arabia's national hydrogen strategy has an ambitious target of 4 million tons per year of clean hydrogen, thus positioning the country as a global leader in the production and export of this crucial energy carrier. Also, the Public Investment Fund, or PIF, is an important part of this transition, investing substantially in hydrogen-related projects. An example is the joint venture with the Air Products to construct a $5 billion green hydrogen plant within the country. Beyond hydrogen, Saudi Arabia has made significant strides in environmental stewardship. In October 2022, the PIF achieved a milestone by successfully auctioning 1.4 million tons of carbon credits, marking the region's debut into the voluntary carbon market. This highlights the kingdom's commitment to embracing sustainable practices and reducing its carbon footprint. In conjunction with these initiatives, the country is experiencing a paradigm shift in its approach to energy. A departure from the traditional economic model is evident as Saudi Arabia endeavors to develop 11.4 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity. This huge undertaking signifies a commitment to cleaner energy sources and holds potential geopolitical importance in the global energy landscape. However, despite the overarching goal of reducing fossil fuel subsidies under Vision 2030, Saudi Arabia struggles with the reality that it retained the world's third largest subsidies in 2019, amounting to nearly $30 billion. This financial support, primarily directed towards oil, fossil fuel, electricity production, and natural gas, poses challenges to the financial viability of renewable energy technologies. The availability of cheap fossil fuels may dampen incentives for investments in renewables, a problem that Saudi Arabia is trying to navigate. Nonetheless, in response to these challenges, the kingdom introduced the Saudi Green Initiative, or SGI, in 2021. Positioned as a steward of sustainable long-term climate action, SGI has ambitious targets focusing on emission reduction, afforestation, and land and sea protection. By 2030, the kingdom envisions that 50% of its energy will be derived from renewable sources. SGI is spearheading these transformative efforts, such as the Carbon Circular Economy Program and the Saudi Arabia Energy Efficiency Program. As Saudi Arabia embarks on this transformative journey, extensive investments in research and development underscore a commitment to advancing solar and wind technologies, while simultaneously enhancing the efficiency and cost-effectiveness of existing renewable technologies. However, challenges persist, including a shortage of skilled human resources in the renewable power sector. And despite the strides in renewable energy, oil exports remain important to the kingdom's economic development and export portfolio. Plans are in place to expand oil production capacity to 13 million barrels per day by 2027. While this expansion solidifies Saudi Arabia's position as a reliable global supplier, it also presents a unique opportunity. The additional production and related revenues provide the finances needed to invest in and develop technologies that capture emissions, ensuring alignment with the kingdom's emission reduction targets. However, the plan is counterproductive, and looking forward, Saudi Arabia still stands at a crossroads. The kingdom has the potential to emerge as an even stronger leader in the energy transition within the region. This entails joint investments, research programs, training, education initiatives, and incentives that will accelerate the adoption of electrification, energy efficiency, and the utilization of hydrogen by their citizens. But the question still remains, is it possible? As the world watches, Saudi Arabia's journey towards sustainability unfolds, leaving a lasting imprint on the global energy landscape. The choices made by Saudi Arabia today will shape its future and its standing in the international community tomorrow regarding climate and clean energy change.
It's a lie,
Yeah,
straight up.
It's a straight up lie.
Okay.
100%.
So then,
Obviously, it's been trained on perforated data.
You can achieve better cohesion between what humans want and what AI does.
Elon Musk drops a bombshell, accusing OpenAI of deception, and asserting that the concept of a digital god is far from benign.
I don't know, except to say that by the time these lawsuits are decided, we'll have digital god. So ask digital god at that point. These lawsuits won't be decided before on a time frame that is relevant.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think we live, there's that, I don't know if it's actually a real Chinese saying or not, but may you live in interesting times.
Right.
It's apparently not a good thing. Well, there's regulation around anything which is a physical danger or a danger to the public. So cars are heavily regulated, communications are heavily regulated, rockets and aircraft are heavily regulated. The general philosophy about regulation is that when something is a danger to the public, that there needs to be some government oversight.
In a stark warning, Musk emphasizes the urgent need for heavy government regulation to prevent AI from becoming a peril to the public.
So then basically sort of a fatalistic resignation helped me sleep at night because I was having trouble sleeping at night because of AI danger. Now, what to do about it? I mean, I've been the biggest, the one banging the drum the hardest, by far the longest, or at least one of the longest for AI danger. And these regulatory things that are happening, the single biggest reason they're happening is because of me. Now, this tends to cause the AI accelerationists to get up in arms because they think AI is sort of heaven, basically.
Well, you typically don't like regulation. You've pushed back on regulators for the most part in the world of Tesla and so many instances where we read articles about you pushing back on the regulators. I'm so curious why, in this instance, now you own one of these businesses.
Musk, a vocal advocate for AI caution, reflects on being a pioneer in highlighting the potential dangers of artificial intelligence.
So I think, in my view, AI is more dangerous than and we regulate. You can't just go make it in your backyard. I think we should have some kind of regulation with AI.
One of the things about training on data has been this idea that you're not going to train or that these things are not being trained on people's copyrighted information. Historically, that's been the concept.
Yeah, that's a huge lie.
Say that again?
Yes, these AIs are all trained on copyrighted data, obviously.
So you think it's a lie when OpenAI says that this is not, none of these guys say they're training on copyrighted data?
Oh, that's a lie.
It's a lie, straight up.
It's a straight up lie.
Okay.
100%.
So then,
obviously, it's been trained on copyrighted data.
Amid escalating concerns, Musk urges swift regulation of AI, highlighting the need for proactive measures to control its rapid acceleration.
I would prefer to, personally, I would prefer to live in interesting times. And we live in the most interesting of times. I think for a while there, I was really getting demotivated and losing sleep over the threat of AI danger. And then I finally sort of became fatalistic about it and said, well, even if I knew it was certain, would I choose to be alive at that time or not? And I said I probably would have choose to be alive at that time because it's the most interesting thing, even if there's nothing I could do about it. I stopped using TikTok when I felt the AI probing my mind, and it made me uncomfortable. So I stopped using it. Anyway, and in terms of anti-Semitic content, I mean, TikTok is rife with that. It has the most viral anti-Semitic content by far.
But do you think the Chinese government is using it to manipulate the minds of Americans?
No.
Is that something that you think we should worry about? I mean, you have different states that are trying to ban it.
I don't think this is some Chinese government plot. But it is, the TikTok algorithm is entirely AI powered. So it is really just trying to find the most viral thing possible. It's what is going to keep you glued to the screen. Right? That's it. Now, on sheer numbers, there are on the order of 2 billion Muslims in the world, and I think much smaller number of Jewish people. What, 20 million, something? Many orders of magnitude fewer. So if you just look at content production, just on sheer numbers basis, this is going to be overwhelmingly anti-Semitic.
Elon Musk doubles down, arguing that AI poses a greater threat than other heavily regulated entities, emphasizing the urgency for oversight.
As I said a moment ago, one should not take what is viewed in the media as being the whole picture. There are literally hundreds, this is not an exaggeration, so there are probably 100 million regulations that my companies comply with. And there are probably 5 that we don't. And if we disagree with some of those regulations, it's because we think the regulation that is meant to do good doesn't actually do good.
In a compelling revelation, Musk asserts his pivotal role in the creation of OpenAI, shedding light on the origins of the influential organization.
The reason I am the reason OpenAI exists.
How much money did you give?
I'm not sure the exact number, but it's some number on the order of $50 million. Man, fate loves irony, next level. So I used to be close friends with Larry Page, and I would stay at his house, and we'd have these conversations long into the evening about AI, and I would be constantly urging him to be careful about the danger of AI, and he was really not concerned about the danger of AI and was quite cavalier about it. And at the time, Google, especially after their acquisition of DeepMind, had 3/4 of the world's AI talent. They had obviously a lot of computers and a lot of money. So it was a unipolar world for AI. And we've got a unipolar world, but the person who controls that does not, or at least did not seem to be concerned about AI safety. That sounded like a real problem. So, and then the final straw was Larry calling me a speciesist for being pro-human consciousness instead of machine consciousness. And I'm like, well, yes, I guess I am. I am a speciesist.
Unmasking what he perceives as a falsehood, Musk claims OpenAI's training of AI involves deceptive copyright practices.
In fact, I think a lot of people perhaps don't quite realize that they're already a cyborg. So you've got your limbic system, your sort of basic drives, your cortex, which is the thinking and planning, and then you have a tertiary layer, which is your computers, your devices, your phones, laptops, all the servers that exist, the applications. And in fact, I think probably a lot of people have found that if you leave your cell phone behind...
Take it away.
If you get
panicking.
Yeah, if you forget your cell phone, it's like missing limb syndrome. You know, you've like where'd that thing go? Losing your cell phone is like missing limb syndrome. So, because it is, your cell phone is an extension of yourself. The limitation is bandwidth. So the rate at which you can input, or I should say output information into your phone or computer is very slow. So with a phone, it's really just the speed of your thumb movements, and with, best case scenario, you're a speed typist on a keyboard, but even that data rate is very slow. We're talking about tens, maybe hundreds of bits per second, whereas a computer can communicate in trillions of bits per second. So and this is admittedly somewhat of a Hail Mary shot or whatever, is that if you can improve the bandwidth between your cortex and your digital tertiary self, then you can achieve better cohesion between what humans want and what AI does. At least that's one theory. I'm not saying this is a sure thing. It's just one potential iron in the fire. If ultimately, hundreds of millions or billions of people get a high bandwidth interface to their digital tertiary self, their AI self effectively, then that seems like that probably leads to a better future for humanity.
The weight of AI's potential danger burdens Musk, revealing that he loses sleep contemplating the profound risks it presents to humanity.
So you helped to the creation of OpenAI. You put in as much as $50 million.
More than helped. It wouldn't exist without me.
It wouldn't exist without you. So,
I came up with a name. Right. The name OpenAI refers to open source. So the intent was, what was the opposite? What's the opposite of Google? Would be a an open source nonprofit, because Google is closed sourced for profit. And that profit motivation can be potentially dangerous.
Should you have gotten governance for that money? Should you have gotten some level of control, perhaps, in retrospect?
Yeah, I fully admit to being a huge idiot here. Anyway, so OpenAI was like meant to be open as an open source. It was created as a 501c3, so part of it is also in the beginning. I thought, look, this is probably a hopeless endeavor. How could we possibly compete with? How could OpenAI possibly compete with Google DeepMind? I mean, this seemed like an ant against an elephant. You know, it's just not a contest. And I was also, I was instrumental in recruiting the key scientists and engineers, most notably Ilya Sutskever. In fact, Ilya went back and forth several times because he would say he's going to join OpenAI, then Demis would convince him not to, then I would convince him to do so, and this went back and forth several times, and ultimately he decided to join OpenAI, and really Ilya joining was the linchpin for OpenAI being ultimately successful.
So you're very...
Musk unveils a disturbing reality, exposing the prevalence of anti-Semitic content on platforms like TikTok and its implications.
I think generally it would be a good idea to have some kind of AI regulatory agency, and you start off with a team that gathers insight to get a maximum understanding. Then you have some proposed rulemaking, and then eventually you have regulations that are put in place. And this is something we have for everything that is a potential danger to the public. So if it is, if we're with Food and Drug Administration, we've got aircraft with the FAA and rockets. There's anything that is a danger to the public. Over time, we have learned, often the hard way, after many people, to have a regulatory agency to protect public safety. I'm not someone who thinks that regulation is some panacea where it's only good. Of course, there are some downsides to regulation in that things move a bit slower. And sometimes you get regulatory capture and that kind of thing. But on balance, I think the public would not want to get rid of most regulatory agencies. And you can think of it also as like the regulatory agency being like a referee. What sports game doesn't have a referee? You need someone to make sure that people are playing fairly, not breaking the rules. And that's why basically every sport has a referee of one kind or another. So that's the rationale for AI safety. And I've been pushing this all around the world. And when I was in China a few months ago, meeting with some of the senior leadership, my primary topic was AI safety and regulation. And they, after we had a long discussion, agreed that there's merit to AI regulation and immediately took action in this regard. So sometimes we'll get this comment of like, well, if the West does AI regulation, surely then what if China doesn't and then leaps ahead? And I think they're also taking it very seriously because, the opposite of whatever moral constraints you program into the system.
Elon Musk engages in a critical analysis of regulations targeting his companies, expressing disagreement with certain aspects.
It does seem weird that something can be a nonprofit open source and somehow transform itself into a for-profit closed source. This would be like let's say you funded an organization to save the Amazon rainforest, and instead they became a lumber company and chopped down the forest and sold it for money. And you'd be therefore like, well, wait a second, that's the exact opposite of what I gave the money for.
Yeah.
Is that legal? That doesn't seem legal. And if it is, and in general, if it is legal to start a company as a nonprofit and then take the IP and transfer it to a for-profit that then makes tons of money, shouldn't everyone start? Shouldn't that be the default? And then I also think it's important to understand the when push comes to shove. Let's say they do create some digital superintelligence, almost godlike intelligence. Well, who's in control?
Yeah.
And what exactly is the relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft? And I do worry that Microsoft actually may be more in control than say, the leadership team at OpenAI realizes. Microsoft, as part of the Microsoft's investment, they have rights to all of the software, all of the model weights, and everything necessary to run the inference system.
So they essentially have a great deal of control.
At any point, Microsoft could cut off OpenAI. I think we will have landed on Mars, and I think we will have sent people to the moon, and maybe if we get lucky, we'll have sent people to Mars within 8 years. We can bring all the creatures with us, and we can ensure that life on Earth continues on Mars, even after Earth becomes unlivable in the distant future. I believe if Mars was warmed up, you'd have an ocean about a mile deep on 40% of the planet. So it's quite a lot of water.
Elon Musk boldly declares that within 8 years, humanity will not just visit but occupy Mars, ensuring the continuation of life beyond Earth's potential demise.
We want to have a spacesuit that you can walk around in, because if you're on the moon, you want to be able to walk around on the moon, walk around on Mars. So having a high mobility spacesuit that actually isn't crazy expensive, ideally, and that you can walk around in comfortably is a big deal. It's actually an important thing that needs to be developed. Mars has to be self-sustaining, which means if the ships stop coming for any reason whatsoever, Mars must not be out. That's really the threshold. And then we as a civilization need to achieve that threshold before global warfare or any other kind of event that eradicates civilization.
Initially, Musk's Martian ambitions took shape as the philanthropic mission Mars Oasis, paving the way for a grander vision of a self-sustaining city on the Red Planet.
At first, I was going to do this philanthropic mission to Mars called Mars Oasis. And then as I started investigating what it would take to launch this mission to Mars, just a little greenhouse, basically, it was intended to inspire the public. And ultimately made in large numbers. Because if we send, say, 1 million people to Mars, then that's 1 million spacesuits, or 1 million Mars suits that you need. So we'll have to make a lot of these things. And we're also going to launch Starlink on that flight. It appears highly likely that Mars had liquid oceans, albeit a long time ago. There's a lot of ice. So Mars is covered in ice. And now the ice is then covered in dust for the mostly, except at the poles. So there's a lot of ice. So we've got an arduous 2 or 3 years ahead of us, with probably many bumps on the road. But at the end of that, we should have something that enables a base on the moon and a base on Mars. And we really are designing this for just an extremely high mass flux to the moon and Mars. And it can do both.
The self-sustaining threshold proves to be an exacting challenge, as even the slightest oversight could jeopardize the longevity of Martian life.
That self-sustaining threshold is actually a very tough threshold to meet, because even if you're missing a tiny thing, then eventually that Mars will die out. So you've got to be able to not just build, for example, computer chips, but you need to be able to build computer chip factories. Because if you can't build computer chip factories, the factory that you do build will eventually break down, and then you will have no chips, and then that's it. So it's kind of like a long sea voyage, where if you're just missing vitamin C, yeah, you'll cruise on for a while, but then your teeth will fall out, and you'll. So that was a real problem in the old days. Anyway, it's quite a high threshold, and like Mars is a fixer-upper of a planet. Needs some work, but so it's not like you can just run around outdoors and fish or live off the land. You can't live off the land on Mars. So it's really quite a lot of work that's required to make that work.
Musk emphasizes the paramount goal: transforming Earth into a multi-planet civilization with a self-sustaining city on Mars, strategically distant from our home planet.
I think ultimately, if there is a self-sustaining city on Moon or Mars, that self-sustaining city will achieve autonomy at some point. I think it's quite important that in fact, not quite important, it's extremely important that we become a multi-planet civilization and create a self-sustaining city, ideally on Mars, because that's quite far away from Earth. And I think if something were to take down Earth civilization, then it's less likely to take out a Mars civilization, because Earth and Mars are only in the same quadrant of the solar system for 6 months every 2 years. So we've got a lot of separation. And I think a lot about the Fermi paradox of where are the aliens. I've seen no evidence of aliens. People always ask me if I've seen any evidence of aliens. I would immediately shout from the rooftops and from the X platform of any evidence whatsoever about aliens. I would be talking about it immediately. And I have thus far seen none. That's a concern, because it means that we perhaps are alone, and maybe there were many other civilizations, but they failed to pass the great filter of going from one planet to being a multi-planet civilization. So I guess my concern is that we need to keep civilization going at least long enough to be a multi-planet civilization. At that point, I think we stabilize civilization and consciousness and greatly extend the probable lifespan of civilization and consciousness as we know it. Now, I do want to emphasize this is not some escape hatch from Earth, because people misinterpret this as like some escape hatch from Earth. This really doesn't apply to me personally, because I will probably in 40 or 50 years, hopefully living that long. Maybe I don't live even that long, but civilization can last for tens of thousands of years, perhaps hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of years. So I think it's very important that we make life multiplanetary while the window is open.
Delving into his vision, Musk vividly describes how he envisions Mars, detailing the future human occupation and the transformation of the Martian landscape.
This is the long-term goal. This is what we want Mars to look like, is starships coming and going, an incredible, beautiful Mars city, and a flourishing civilization on Mars. Ultimately, we can transform Mars into an Earth-like planet with terraforming. Just needs to be warmed up, really, and then it could be ultimately an Earth-like planet, and we could bring the life from Earth. We could extend life from Earth to Mars, and really, it has to be humans.
Well, at first, you would have to have a life support system. Because Mars has a low-density atmosphere, only about 1% the density of Earth, and it's primarily CO2. Now, over time, you can terraform Mars. Terraform means make it like Earth, essentially. And if you warm Mars up, you will there's a bunch of frozen CO2 that will evaporate, densify the atmosphere, and you'd actually want kind of global warming on Mars, because Mars is about 50% further away from the sun than the Earth. So it gets about less than half the solar energy that Earth does.
Elon Musk underscores the historical significance, the unprecedented opportunity to extend life and consciousness beyond Earth for the first time in 4.5 billion years.
And this is the first time in the history of Earth that in 4.5 billion years of Earth's existence that it's been possible to extend life and consciousness to another planet. So that window is now open for the first time in 4.5 billion years. Now, it may stay open for a long time, but it may also close. And I think so we should just take advantage of the time when the window is open to make life multiplanetary and ensure that the tiny candle of consciousness in a vast darkness continues to burn, does not go out. I think Starlink is enough. There's a little diagram on the Starlink router. It's for people probably don't notice, but it's a home and transfer from Earth to Mars. So if you look on your Starlink router, you'll see that transfer diagram. That is the means by which life becomes multiplanetary.
Exploring Martian history, Musk points to compelling evidence of the planet's past liquid water, laying the foundation for potential human habitation.
The evidence suggests that it is most likely that Mars had liquid water. Well, just over time, the solar system cooled. So Earth used to be much hot. Like in the very early Earth was like molten rock. So really almost nothing could survive in the beginning. We were just a ball of lava. We're still mostly a ball of lava. We're we're like creme brulee. Like there's a thin crust, and it's mushy rock under, very hot mushy rock underneath. And technically that rock is in a semi-solid state, but as soon as it gets to a low pressure, like pops out of the ocean, you have a volcano, obviously, with lava.
Yeah.
So it's at surface ambient pressure, we're basically covered in liquid rock.
Are you aware?
We're a thin crust on liquid rock.
The pivotal question emerges. Will we achieve self-sustaining multiplanetary status while Earth's civilization persists? Or will we falter in this transformative endeavor?
The key question sort of, I think, about for civilization is, the key test perhaps for civilization is, do we make it through this Fermi great filter of going from a one-planet civilization to a multi-planet civilization?
With SpaceX, it's a harder problem because the long-term objective is to make life multiplanetary with a self-sustaining city on Mars, which is likely to be very cash flow negative at first, and very much a long-term. Let's just say the target market on Mars is small. You got to think long-term here.
You're also going to have to get on very well with those you go with, I would imagine.
Yes, definitely. Sanity will be a prime requirement for and stability for traveling to Mars. You don't want someone going nuts and opening the airlock in the middle of the night.
Right.
So anyway, so SpaceX is a harder problem because it's much a long-term goal and with a lot more money lost along the way. So got to make sure that happens.
Musk presents a stark but optimistic scenario. Even in Earth's worst-case scenario, Mars stands a significantly better chance of preserving civilization.
So, that's really the key test. Do we become a self-sustaining multi-planet civilization while civilization still exists, or don't we? I think that's really the key question. I think we've got a good chance, but it's not a sure thing. That's why time is of the essence. I think we want to make Mars self-sustaining as quickly as possible. It's not just a question of getting people to Mars, but it's getting enough tonnage and equipment to Mars to enable Mars to be self-sustaining. The key test being that if the resupply ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, does Mars out or does it continue?
I mean, it's to make life multiplanetary such that, and the key threshold for multiplanetary is that if the supply ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, that Mars does not out. That's the critical great filter. If you talk about things in terms of the Fermi paradox, the great filter is Mars being self-sustaining without any resupply ships from Earth. Until we reach that point, we're really just a one-planet civilization with an extension. But at the point at which the planets are self-sustaining, or Mars is self-sustaining, then even in a worst-case scenario of Earth civilization, either with a bang or a whimper, then Mars would have a much better chance of surviving. So the intent here overall is to ensure that the light of consciousness, which appears to be just a tiny candle in a vast darkness.
Painting a picture of the colossal task ahead, Musk outlines the necessity of reaching 1 million tons to orbit to construct a city on Mars, underscoring the monumental engineering challenges that lie ahead.
What's really mind-boggling is that number should increase by 50% this year. So I guess on the order of like 90% of all mass to orbit, not counting Starship. So as we start launching Starship is like roughly 100 tons to orbit with every flight. There's a path to getting Starship to do over 200 tons with full reusability. So 200 tons to useful orbit with full reusability. And yeah, it's really an incredible amount. 1,200 tons of useful load to orbit last year. Yeah. That's just astounding. So I think that really deserves a round of applause. Like wow. I mean, that's the most mind-blowing. And the rate of increase is just astonishing. Now, these numbers will actually look very small in the future. In order to build a city on Mars, we'll need to be kind of in the million-ton to orbit range. So maybe a little higher, ideally a little higher, but it's sort of, if you just try to get things to the right order of magnitude, like not trying to get to an exact number, but try to get the order of magnitude right. I think it's on the order. It's roughly 1 million tons to Earth orbit. That'll get you roughly 200,000 tons to the surface of Mars. So roughly, approximately 20% of whatever you get to Earth orbit, you can get to the surface of Mars. And figure like maybe we need at least 1 million tons of useful load to the surface of Mars for it to become self-sustaining.